Good evening to the House Ways and Means Committee. Mr. Chairman, I am Senator Shower. I represent District O and here to testify tonight on the Fiscal Policy Working Group report and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. I'll pose to you the same question that I posed earlier. Do you think that the Fiscal Policy Working Group report is still relevant today?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I believe the answer to that is yes. As Representative Christ-Tompkins pointed out, it is not only, I believe it's both relevant and a critical step that has to happen if this state is ever going to put its fiscal house in order, if we are ever going to be truly open for business, if we're ever going to have investment in this state so we have certainty, which is what most businesses want. They want to know that they are going to have certainty in what the tax environment's going to be. What kind of a workforce do they have available to them? Will people want to live and work in this state? Is it going to shrink? Is it going to grow? But stability for businesses is important. One of the problems we know with Alaska is that we're not stable. We're a petro state. And so our budget goes up and down every year. The tax available to us to spend goes up and down every year. That's not stability. And we've made that worse since 2016 by fighting relentlessly over the permanent fund dividend ad nauseum. And that fight every year, we never know what it's going to be. And so we don't know if we're going to spend $1 billion, $2 billion, $2.5 billion, where are we at? Everything changes. So, and I appreciate JKT taking time, Mr. Chairman, to be on the phone tonight because I spent countless hours with him many times in China at 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning on a trip because we were working in the interim. So there's a lot of time I have with him on the phone where he went to extraordinary lengths. And we've called in others like Senator Wielechowski and Fritz Pettyjohn, former senator from Alaska, who spent also countless hours with us to talk about how we might make the language work that would be acceptable on the permanent fund dividend point, because that was a big point of contention. How do you put that into the Constitution in a way that doesn't lock in the formula that scared a lot of people, but still gives us the certainty? Because I think that is really at the heart of this, as JKT said, is how do we create, because that was always my question, was there's two problems, right? There's the math problem and the political problem. You have to solve them both. And if you don't solve the problem. And the other critical part that he mentioned here, which I will go to the process very briefly, Mr. Chairman, is a comprehensive solution must be negotiated and agreed as a whole, not taken up one part at a time. And the process at all times, keep in mind, we can realistically pass the legislature the rule of 2111, but that the math problem and the political problem. And so I would end my initial statement, Mr. Chairman, by saying that if you do this, as some have attempted to do, by one thing at a time, it will fail. They tried this right after the Fiscal Policy Working Group to enact essentially just their own version of a statutory PFD. It failed miserably. It wasn't going to pass. Why? Because you leave certain groups out. JKT just said it. If he would like to have the taxes, I would like to have the cuts. Some people would like to have a statutory PFD. Some people would like the spending cap, and some people don't want a cap. The point of the Fiscal Policy Working Group, as Rep. McCabe and others know that we're there, is that all of us eventually were willing to step off of our positions to find a solution that would solve both problems and a comprehensive plan that doesn't leave any group behind. I don't like all of it either. There are certain things I don't agree with on it, but I also understand to move this state forward. To answer your question we started with, is it relevant? Mr. Chairman, it's not only relevant, it's critical to our future for our kids and our grandkids.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions, Representative McCabe?
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity, and through the chair, maybe it's just a comment and not so much of a question, but one of the first things that happened for me on this Fiscal Policy Working Group, and Senator Shower's correct, Representative Christ-Tompkins was very good at talking to us individually and together. But one of the very first things that happened is, I was a full PFD guy. My district wants a full PFD. They wanted a full PFD, and we had a sort of come to Jesus meeting, JKT and I, at one point, where he said, Kevin, this group is not going to pivot around your idea for a full PFD. And it was as a former negotiator, for me, it was a wake-up call. It's like, wow, okay, so he's talking compromise. And if he was willing to compromise and his side, if you will, was willing to compromise, then I realized, and I think Senator Shower at the same, virtually the same time, and I think Senator Hughes as well, that we needed to find a way to compromise. And I think our only issue was we needed to make sure that the rest of the Fiscal Policy Working Group realized that our position in the middle was not a starting point for them. it was a compromise, and I think JKT helped them understand that we had already compromised by coming sort of to the middle or closer to the middle, and that was not a starting point to go even further into the other side. So we had many discussions, and I appreciate Senator Shower's leadership as well as JKT's leadership. He did a great job, in my opinion. So,
Thank you. Any other comments from committee members? Any final words?
I will, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Just very briefly, I think JKT also highlighted this. I keep saying his name because it's good to hear his voice. We had a lot of work on this. I had probably 80 hours worth. I mean, it was a lot of time we spent over 35 days. But I do think it's important to note as I close that parts of this can be statutory. What I didn't mention was, as he mentioned, the agreement eventually, to the angst of some, was that parts of this must be in the Constitution. They have to be. And the reason for that is not only the faith of the public. Will they ever believe that we will follow like the statutory laws that we pass? We don't, and we haven't. They have a lack of faith that we will do that. And to have the certainty, as he said, for the next generation, perhaps 50 years, the Constitution is really the one method we have that, to this day, by and large, we haven't been able to jump over that hurdle. It's been high enough. The judiciary has basically supported that we have to live within that construct, not the statutes. So while there are some statutory things in this fiscal policy working group solution, while there are some areas where we want to provide the ability to still be flexible and not bind future legislators, we have to have some certainty on a few of these things. And it is crystal clear that the current constitutional spending cap we know doesn't work. And it is crystal clear that unless we take the PFD off the table, we will continue to fight about it, and we will not have the stability we need. So I just think it's important to highlight that some of this is statutory and is okay to have that maneuvering, but at the same time, some of it is constitutional, and those changes need to be made. And that is an important point, because that is a high bar. And this legislature is going to have to work really hard as a team to get 27 and 14. It's not just 27 in the House, it's 14 in the Senate too. That's a big lift. But without those, Mr. Chairman, we will fail. And quite frankly, we're failing our children if we can't solve these problems. It's akin to having a nice, fancy new car or an old car, and it's shiny on the outside, but when you lift the hood, it's all rusty on the inside. And that's our fiscal structure, Mr. Chairman. We need to solve that, and we need to do it soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Shower. I appreciate it.